Okay, good morning. I just wanted to start with a thank you. Thank you very much to the many of you who've engaged with and contributed to the work of the Commission on Justice in Wales during these past 2 years. Big thanks. And thank you also to the Civil Justice Council for an opportunity to update you on what the Commission has been doing this past 12 months since last year's conference. So we launched our report in the National Assembly for Wales building in Cardiff Bay just 6 weeks ago on the 24th of October. And I think its title, Justice in Wales for the People of Wales, reflects the Commission's focus on how justice is working and also not working for people. The report's based on a wealth of evidence, including more than 200 written submissions we've received from individuals, institutions and organisations, and oral evidence that we took from 150 witnesses right across the justice system. I think it's quite significant that access to justice was central to our work and runs right through the report. And I wanted to focus this morning, just in the few minutes available, on Chapter 3, which considers information, advice and assistance, which I know will be of particular interest to all of you. So just to pick out some highlights from that chapter. So we found that the significant cuts to the legal aid following LASPO in 2012 have hit Wales particularly hard. We know it's had resonance right throughout England and Wales, but I think in Wales particularly hard. And that's resulted in proper access to justice not being available, with a threat to the rule of law. It's also led to advice deserts in rural and post-industrial areas, and of course they predominate in Wales, where people struggle to receive legal advice, with risks to the sustainability of traditional high street legal practice, and increasing numbers of people representing themselves in courts and tribunals, with adverse impacts on outcomes, and also significantly the efficient use of public money and court resources. We've also highlighted how third sector advice providers have also been adversely affected, but also it's important to be positive as well, and there are lots of positive, the importance of the sector and all the legal advice that's provided to so many people, but also the valuable work of networks like the National Advice Network for Wales, and just in these past few weeks, the 6 regional social welfare law advice networks that have been set up in Wales. And just to give you a very brief bit of background, the National Advice Network was established in 2015 to help develop accessible, good quality information and advice services in Wales. And these regional networks have literally in the process now of meeting for the first time to both pool local and regional knowledge to help tailor advice services to people's needs, and also to work on regional priorities for improvement. The third thing we found as well, and as with much of what I say, I think these issues have already come up a lot already today, lack of public awareness of available support for people's rights and how that links in with the need to do more on public legal education. So those were some of the findings. Moving on then swiftly to some of the conclusions. So these are some of the important things, and there's a flow to this about what we think is needed. Just to give you some highlights. Early advice. Improved advice provision, including greater emphasis on prevention and collaboration. That, I think, applies across the board, but we particularly highlighted that in relation to disputes involving children and families. We also concluded there was a need for a coordinated approach to advice and assistance covering legal aid, third sector provision, litigants in person and public awareness, to provide a balanced approach, crucially, to funding both law firms and third sector advice providers, and to try and avoid advice deserts, not just in geography, which is definitely the case, but also advice deserts through subject area as well. And as I've mentioned already, a broader focus, not just in family justice and children, on prevention and early intervention. We also concluded, linked into that last point, there was a need for a sustainable, streamlined funding strategy and model based crucially on need. So moving on then to 2 of the key recommendations, there was also a third one in Chapter 3 about criminal legal aid, which I won't touch on today. We recommended in Chapter 3 that the funding of legal aid and third sector advice and assistance should be combined in a single fund through the direction of an independent body. We also recommended that support through court, as many will know, formerly the Personal Support Unit, should be expanded, the provision to courts and tribunals throughout Wales. And then some other highlights in some of the other chapters, because you'll appreciate this report covers all justice: crime, civil justice, the legal sector, law schools and legal education. Just some of the highlights. In our chapter 5 on civil justice, we recommended that digital court services and other dispute resolution services that are being developed and introduced must be fully accessible to people throughout Wales, with free assistance available to help individuals use them. In our chapter on what we call delivering justice, locality and structure, we recommended a strategy for Wales for provision of proper physical and digital access to justice before the courts, tribunals and other forms of dispute resolution. They should be drawn up and determined in Wales, again, based on the needs of the people. In our chapter on the Welsh language, we also recommended that digital services that are being introduced, again, must be accessible, free help must be available, and all must be available in Welsh at the same time as the English version. And then towards the end of our report, in chapter 12, we highlighted a range of things, again, right across the justice system that could be introduced or should be introduced, both in the interim, as in immediate steps, and also some longer term aims. So just one of the urgent steps, we said that steps should be taken to improve access to digital court services, and that was having found that both court and tribunal closures have left people in many parts of rural and post-industrial Wales facing not just long but also difficult journeys to their nearest court, and this has been compounded by the low use of remote access facilities and the fact that digital technology advantages are yet to be fully realised in Wales. And then one of the longer term aims, recommendations we had was that there should be the development of a dispute resolution system which enables affordable access to justice at suitable locations. So just to conclude, during an oral statement on the Commission's report in the Assembly on the 5th of November, the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, referred to it as, quote, a landmark report. It gives us not just 78 specific recommendations, but a real treasure trove of testimony and advice. He announced he was setting up a Cabinet Committee on Justice, which will be meeting very soon, and urgent work is underway now in the Welsh Government to prioritise recommendations and put in place an implementation programme. So with that in mind, and going back to the start of thanking you all, is partly also to encourage you all to continue to engage with this very important report. And given its breadth and depth right across the justice system, many partner organisations and stakeholders obviously have a crucial role to play in taking forward the recommendations. And we would very much welcome your thoughts about, firstly, your priorities in the report, and it may go beyond access to justice in Chapter 3, but also, crucially, the ways in which you think you can help us to deliver those recommendations. So, in advance, many thanks for your ongoing support and assistance.
Well, huge thanks to Andrew, and who was the secretary of the Commission producing that report. You can just imagine the scale of that undertaking. And it has produced a lot of recommendations that are really crucial, and they're not only apposite for Wales. It does remind one that not to be overwhelmed by the volume of recommendations, not to be overwhelmed by the challenge of access to justice for those without means, because as we know, and we've looked at each year, each little contribution, each new idea helps and accumulates, and it's so important to start with whatever contribution each of us can manage, and sometimes manage in partnership with another 2 or 3. The total of those individual parts is greater than the sum. Well, with thanks again to Andrew, now another insight into some real action, greatly to the credit of the combination of participants. Talking this morning about vulnerable people in the system, if one describes some of those who are vulnerable as women survivors, you know exactly what I mean. And so Flows, finding legal options for women survivors, has a major part to play and has been playing a major part. And both Alison Lamb from RCJ Advice Bureau and Paul Yates from Freshfields and the Administrative Justice Council will give us an insight. Thank you.
It's a good welcome.
Last Friday, we launched the digital tools for our Flows partnership, and I think we had similar cheers last week, didn't we? So this is really apt. I'm going to tell you about Flows, what it is, and Paul's going to touch on the very innovative tool that he came up with 5 years ago that is being used in Flows, CourtNav. So, I'm from RCJ Advice. We are the legal advice providers within the litigant in person support strategy, and we deliver legal advice to litigants in person across England and Wales. One of the fundamental things that drives us when we're delivering that advice in our physical bases at the Royal Courts of Justice and also at the Central London Family Court is to identify those few people that are entitled to public funding. It's vital that we do that because if the public funding is there, people need to access it. We're really aware that a lot of people don't know that public funding exists. And where there is legal aid for domestic abuse cases, we know that a lot of women have not accessed this through issues with gathering gateway advice, gateway evidence, and with also having a general lack of awareness. So one of the things I think that's driven Flows is if women are entitled to legal aid, to ensure they reach a legal aid practitioner and they get the benefit of that advice. The other thing that I think has driven Flows from the start was the fact that we deliver free legal advice at Central London Family Court. And any of the providers of family legal advice in this room will know that domestic abuse is sadly a high percentage of the queries that we receive through our legal advice. We have, we did have 2 years ago, we had a LEF Justice First Fellow, Alex, and her project was to work with refuges in London to give direct advice in those refuges to women who were experiencing domestic abuse. And what Alex's work really helpfully identified and contributed to the development of Flows was that there are thousands and thousands of frontline workers in refuges, in women's aid, and citizens' advice, who give advice, give support, give essential services to get women safe, give accommodation, give emotional support. But they themselves aren't aware of the legal aid that is available. They themselves are unconfident in accessing those remedies. So Flows was devised by ourselves and our main partner, Rights of Women, to support those frontline organisations and the workers in those frontline organisations to better be aware of legal aid and the legal remedies. And then once they were, to give them an online tool that would assist them with that process. So what Flows consists of, there are 2 paralegals and 2 lawyers in our team at the Central London Family Court who give a daily phone service and email service, consultation service to frontline workers and women. When we started the project 9 months ago, 10 months ago, the first thing that struck us was it was mainly women that were ringing us. And when we asked those women why they were contacting us, it was because they couldn't access support in their local area. But I'm pleased to say now Flows is out in the public domain with frontline organisations. That has now tilted. 80% of the the phone calls we get are from frontline workers who are going to carry on supporting that woman once they've got the legal advice from us, and that is what we wanted to achieve. The other aspects of Flows is we have a referral app. We're working with police forces across the country so that they refer women into Flows. We fund 2 Flows solicitors in areas where we know there isn't that good a provision, the advice deserts that have been talked about this morning. So we fund Vicky in the North East Law Centre, and we fund Kate, who's based in Brighton and Hove, Citizens Advice. And both of those solicitors conduct the Flows initiatives. Rights of Women deliver an online discussion forum. And that forum is there for frontline workers to really test out what cases they're dealing with, what policy issues they're seeing. And then we have CourtNav, which we've developed to include the non-molestation and occupational order application and the FL 401, which Paul is going to talk about. And then we've also worked with our other partners. We've worked with Advice Now, because we've half-funded their video, which assists women to see how the form is completed through an online video. And we contributed money to join in with the Family Justice Council, who was supporting that initiative. We've also been funded by the Legal Education Foundation for our Flows website. Our Flows website now contains information about every form of domestic abuse, gives women safe options if they're in danger to get to the police or to get to national services, but also gives women a postcode search so they can find a frontline organisation or they can find a legal aid practitioner. From the start, we've involved partners, so we've got a steering group with Refuge, Women's Aid, Citizens Advice, Law Works, Litigants in Person Network, and also Resolution, the Solicitors Family Group, and Legal Aid Practitioners Group. And one of the things that those steering group members have contributed to, right from the start, is to say, if we're going to work with legal aid practitioners, we only work with domestic abuse accredited solicitors. We only work with the legal aid solicitors who've got a track record of supporting women. And that's been very influential. And the main tool that we give to those solicitors is we divert women to them via CourtNav. And Paul is going to explain how that works.
Thanks, Alison. So very briefly, CourtNav itself, it's, for those of you who don't know, it's basically just an online decision tree tool that uses simple, usually multiple choice question and answer type of interface to automatically complete court forms and court documents. So essentially hoovers up information from the user about what they're after, what their application is for, the grounds, and in this iteration also the evidence that they need to support that application. It's through the ordering of the questions and the logic that's within the tool that a lot of the value is added, because that's where you can obviously shield the user from the majority of the complexity in the process. It departs from what HMCTS can offer in that it does provide advice. The forms are checked by a lawyer through the Flows service. And there's the ability to ask questions as well, which are answered. But a lot of the mechanics of how the tool itself operates, I think, have a lot of learnings for what can be done within the reform programme in terms of sort of stage one, Briggs stage one style tools. One of the things that's reasonably unusual about this, I think, is the sort of sustained effort that has gone into the CourtNav tool. It launched back in, 2013 with the initial module which dealt with divorce. So it was filled out the D8 and associated forms. And I think it's testament to Alison and the team at RCJ in particular that over those years, really a lot of thought's gone into what's worked well, what's worked less well, how can it evolve. And I think an example of that is one of the learnings was around the importance of the frontline advice workers who have the trust established already with the end user, and that's reflected in the model Alison's described, where CourtNav sits within this wider Flows project, within this wider network of frontline services, such as women's refuges who are given access to CourtNav and to the referral app and to an online forum, and also have the advantage of phone and email consultancy advice. That's it.
I just want to finish by saying what we're trying to achieve through Flows. Flows tampon tax funding ends in March 2020. And we as a partnership are really, really keen to demonstrate that the approach that we've taken works. So our aims are frontline workers are better able to support women survivors to access legal remedies. This is via the phone and the email advice. It's via the discussion forum. We've had over 3,000 inquiries to our phone line, and I think around 300 frontline workers are signed up to the discussion forum. Our second aim is solicitors are able to access clients and resources to pursue the legal remedies that those women need. And this is where CourtNav comes in. We've got 60 legal aid providers based around England. We still haven't got anybody to cover Norwich. That's a big gap for us, but we've got 100 sites covered. Those solicitors will receive an email to say that a client is eligible for legal aid and wants their services. They can't see that CourtNav case until they do their conflict of interest. And then they contact the client and they proceed with the legal aid application. So far, I would say around 25% of our solicitors have received CourtNav cases because it's only been going for about 3 weeks. Jenny Beck from Beck Fitzgerald holds the record that she announced last week, and she actually accepted a claim in 1 minute 40 seconds last week. That's there to be broken. What Jenny also said was what drives solicitors to be involved is this really important engagement with the frontline advisors. That those frontline advisors have more time, more skills to ask very complex and difficult questions and sensitive questions of a woman, so that when that woman has had the benefit of working with a frontline organisation, when the application comes to the legal aid solicitor, then the legal aid solicitor is able to concentrate on that legal work. Our third aim is obviously women survivors are safer, and this is one of the key things that we're working on currently. Nesta we're one of their finalists in the Legal Access Challenge, and one of the things we're doing with the Nesta money is doing a social media campaign to ensure that women are aware of the services. And then fourthly, our aim is to address policy and practice. Having a whole range of family solicitors round the table, the immediate thing that came out in our first steering group was that the practice of courts varies across the country. So the statement that is required in Brighton looks very different to the statement that is wanted in Sunderland. We also had anecdotal reports that we know through our own experience that courts and the judiciary far easily recognise the nuances of physical violence. They're less likely to be able to respond to coercive control, financial abuse, sexual abuse. And what we're doing in the website and what we're doing in the publicity is ensuring that women know that those various forms of abuse exist. One of the most common things we're hearing on the advice line is somebody saying, my friend has said there's something not quite right. I don't know. And then we're hearing a lot of coercion, we're hearing a lot of financial abuse. And the awareness of that is only just starting. That's something that we want to capture. The way we'll do that is there's a data collection in Flows that will collect what the outcome of the non-molestation order is, what the focus of that non-molestation order is, and we will share that with HMCTS. We've been really strongly supported by other networks. Support Through Court, Witness Service are all involved and are referring women into CourtNav. And also, we want to really engage other organisations in ongoing support once the woman is safe with a non-molestation order, because that woman may have debt, welfare benefits, housing issues, and so we're working with local citizens advice, independent advice agencies. I think the thing I will end on, and I think it really came across in our launch last week, is we are all learning from the women that we work with. And last week we had 2 survivors deliver a spoken word piece to our participants, and I think that's what's remained with everybody that came to that event. And when we look at a Civil Justice Council focus of the voice in the system, I think we really, really benefit from hearing the user's voice, and that's something that we ought to try and do more. Thank you.